All right, everybody. Today we're going to go over how to clean out and do some basic maintenance on the Titan Impact 400. So let me flip this thing around and show you what we're working with. Okay, so anytime that I'm cleaning out my sprayer, I like to have two garden hoses hooked up, one going into the sprayer itself and one for simply spraying stuff off. Now, my setup looks a little different because I have upgraded my Titan sprayer with one of these brass fittings so that it takes a standard garden hose connection and I don't have to go into a bucket of water. And I use a Graco inlet filter because this thread is also a garden hose thread, and then it's all compatible. Tools needed for this is fairly straightforward. 2 crescent wrenches should actually do the trick, but I have channel locks in case I have to really wrench on something. And then this stubby flat nose comes in at the end, which is just something that I do. May or may not be recommended, but I like it. All right, now that we are all hooked up here, we've got water coming into the sprayer. I'm gonna come over here and I'm going to actually turn off the water and then come over here and make sure that my line is depressurized so that I'm not getting sprayed in the face with paint. And then we're ready to tear this thing apart and do the initial clean. All right, first step, now that we've got everything depressurized, I like to get into the gun here. And again, this guy was previously cleaned, otherwise this would be a lot more dangerous. Yeah, come into the gun, pull this filter. And as you can see, even though this was previously cleaned, there's still some paint in here. I'm gonna take my sprayer, get that filter as clean as you can. Then I'll throw that in my soaking bucket. Normally over a bucket. Sort of spray out as much of the paint in there as I can. Same deal over here. Spray this guy out. Perfect. And then I'll just reconnect this. And then the handle is ready. And we move on to the filter inside the body. All right, so your second filter is down here inside of this guy right here. And I actually can't find my big crescent wrench, so I'm just gonna use my channel locks, break the pressure on that, pull this guy out. That's why we depressurize everything before we do this, because you don't wanna get sprayed with paint water. And this filter is actually threaded, as you can see. This one's already pretty clean, so I'm actually just gonna throw this guy back in here. But I would normally spray that off and then stick it in the soaking bucket. I'll take the filters out because I've found that if you leave the filter in there, it takes way too long to get all the paint water out of here. So you take them out, clean them, put it back together with no filter, things go a lot quicker. Okay, now that the filters are pulled out of the machine, we're gonna come back over here, flip water pressure back on to the sprayer. And then we're gonna come out here. You're gonna take your drain line, stick it in a bucket so that you can catch the dirty paint. And then, oh, this is difficult without spare hands. Hold please. Okay, so I'm editing the footage for the Titan cleaning video, and some of it was corrupted. So I'm gonna have to reshoot some. And I apologize in advance for any of the choppiness. We will almost certainly just re-record this at some future date. Okay guys, so very simply put, for the initial clean out of your pump sprayer, get your outlet, stick it in a bucket, slap this down, run it for 45 seconds until you're running 50% clear water, and then slap this back. I would keep your sprayer off at this point so you're not over pressurizing. Then take your gun. If you're used to this process, you can start the drain into a leftover paint can so that you have extra paint for the client. There's about half a gallon that's stuck inside of this line if you have a 100-foot line. So it's pretty substantial, but if you're not used to it, you can just drain straight into your clean out bucket. And then again, sprayer off, hold the trigger, start draining into your bucket, then you can turn the sprayer on. You do this so that there's not too much pressure and you're less likely to spray yourself in the face. Run this for probably a minute and a half until you're at least well, as clear as you can get basically, but at least a minute and a half, and then you can switch this off and move on to the next stage. Okay, we have alternated between going out the drain and through the handle, probably, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes worth, 4 or 5 transitions back and forth. At this point, water should be running at least 90% clear. So we're gonna come back over here to the hose, cut our pressure, come back over to the sprayer, drain the pressure, and then we're gonna put our clean filters back in. Okay, now once again, this one was already clean, so I left the filter down here inside of the actual pump housing, so it's just the filter for the gun itself. This almost always sprays unless you want to drain way too much pressure. Filter, thread side up, back down here, screw that back down. Depending on which gun you have, you may or may not need crescent wrenches to do this. This particular gun does not. Throw that back in there. Then I'm gonna come over here, repressurize, make sure we're not leaking out of the handle or anything. And then we go on to the next step. Okay, at this stage, filters are back in, and you're essentially gonna do what you did in the middle of cleaning out your sprayer as well. You're just gonna alternate dumping water through the outlet and water through your gun into your bucket. And then once you're 95% clear, at that point you're probably safe to start draining these onto the ground as opposed to into a bucket. Once again, unless you have a clean out spot on the job site, then the buckets are kind of unnecessary, depending on your local regulations. Okay guys, so this is something I'll only do when it's at least 90% clean already, because you don't want to be getting paint water all over the place, but a little bit generally doesn't hurt as long as you're not using something crazy. But pressure's on, filters are in, everything's more or less good to go. If we set this to the down pump position and then pull the trigger, you see that they both drain at the same time. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll stick my flathead in here, keep that going, and then I'll just leave these laying on the ground for 10-15 minutes running clean water through there until I'm ready to pack up and go.